This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm joined by trainer Gary Lockett over Zoom. Gary, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. It's good to catch up once again. Finally got a big fight for the gym to look forward to, and for one man in particular to look forward to in Jay Harris. Gary, talk to me about that. How excited is he?
Yeah, he's really excited. Obviously, going so close against Martinez, even though the unanimous decision with such wide scores, people didn't see it as a close fight. But we saw it as a close fight over there. Obviously, it was disappointing that he just got caught with that one shot, that body shot in I think the 9th or the 10th round. But other than that, I thought it was a very close fight. And Jay proved his worth. He showed that he's a world-class fighter, and he showed how underrated he's been for years.
I spoke to Ricardo a couple of days ago, and he said he'll adapt to whatever Jay brings. From the footage you've seen of him, Gary, what do you expect him to bring into fight? How are you guys preparing for the style he possesses?
Yeah, Jay's a good all-round boxer, isn't he? He's very tall for the weight. He stands a little bit tall at times. No doubt they will have seen that. I think from my side, I'm Jay's manager. His dad Peter trains him, but he comes up with us once a week. Been sparring with Joe Cordina, been sparring with Ruiz Edwards, and trying to make those adjustments, just trying to drop that level, try to box a little bit more, use his jab, be a little bit tighter when he does use his jab. In the last fight, I think we saw a couple of the flaws in his game against Marcel Braithwaite, but I think, no disrespect to Marcel Braithwaite, but I just think with Jay going from that fight with Martinez, going to a fight with Marcel Braithwaite, perhaps subconsciously he underestimated Marcel that a little bit. And I think that showed in the fight. Even though Jay won it relatively comfortable in the end, he came through a sticky moment in the end. I think it was a 3rd or 4th round. At least we know now that he's got a cast iron chin, but I'd rather not know if that's understandable,
Is there a pressure on Jay to be successful this time out? Because I know if it wasn't for the pandemic, you guys would have been pushing to try and get him back onto the world scene a lot quicker than what it's taken to do so now. Is there how much pressure is there on him to be successful against Sandoval?
Obviously, Sandoval's a good fighter himself. He's highly rated, and he's obviously a golden boy fighter, which says it all, doesn't it? They don't sign anybody that's rubbish, do they? So it's obviously a good fight. I think the only pressure on Jay is the pressure that he puts on himself. It's an IBF title eliminator at the end of the day, which means it's a world-class fight. So I've looked at Sandoval. He's very good. He can punch a little bit, he can box a little bit, but he does seem to fade after maybe 4 or 5 rounds. Perhaps that's something that we can touch on. But as I say, Jay's a world-class fighter in his own right. So is Sandoval a Martinez? No. To me, he's not. He's not anywhere near as good as Martinez. So, when you look at it, that Jay is the only one who's really given Martinez anything to think about in any of his world title fights, then you'd say Jay has to be the favourite going into this fight. But as I say, he's a golden boy fighter, Sandoval, and obviously he's going to be bringing his arsenal, his good arsenal that he's got to the table. And I'm expecting a really tough fight for Jay.
Gary, obviously, as you mentioned, the IBF final eliminator, that belt is up for grabs on Friday night, tomorrow night now. Maruti Fulani versus Sonny Edwards. Just your thoughts on that. What are you expecting from it?
Well, look, boxing's all about timing. I mean, how many times have we heard that? And Maruti, as people's been saying for years, he's getting on now. It might be the right time, but it hasn't been the right time for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 fights that he's had. But I believe he's 38 now. Am I right? I think he's 38.
Yeah.
So look, with the style that Sonny's got, he's fleet of foot. He's got a very good jab, and look, he's got that type of style to give anybody nightmares, because he's content just to land one and then go walkabouts and just turn it on when he needs to. So I think for an Asian man like Maruti, Sonny Edwards is the worst type of fight that he could have picked. So it wouldn't surprise me if Sonny comes out victorious on the weekend.
If Sonny was to win and if Jay was to be successful against Sandoval, I know the low weights don't get the same kind of recognition that the heavier weights do, but how big of a domestic clash would it be between Sonny Edwards and Jay Harris for the IBF strap?
I can't remember a bigger domestic fight at flyweight in my time as a coach. I don't know if you can touch on anything. I can remember back in the day when I was growing up, I can remember Duke McKenzie and Dave McCauley. That fight, that was a very, very big domestic fight. But I'm struggling to remember another flyweight domestic fight that was as big as that. So, yeah, I think, for boxing heads, not really for people who don't really follow boxing, the guys are not household names, but within boxing, people who are fans of BT Sport Boxing, Sky Sports Boxing, everybody would know who these guys are. So if they fought anybody, then it would be a very, very big fight. And hopefully, both guys get very well paid for it.
Gary, moving forwards, and on Saturday night, we see another boxing show, a matchroom show this time around. Derek Chisora, Joseph Parker headlining that card. Just your thoughts on their bout, though. What do you expect from it?
Yeah, you'd have to, you'd have to favour Joe, wouldn't you? Really, Joe Parker. Met him over in Texas. Real nice fella. And obviously, what else could we say about Del Boy that nobody else already knows? He's more or less a household name in Britain. He's, his record is a who's who of the heavyweight division, isn't it? And look, Joe's got to be the favourite, but who could write off Del Boy? I mean, look at the good performance he put up against Usyk when everybody expected Usyk to blow him away, didn't they? And I think he came out of that fight with credit. Some people even saying that he won the fight. So look, as I previously said, Joe's got to be the favourite, but you wouldn't count Derek Chisora out.
Is this a fight then, Gary, in your opinion? Does it go the distance, or do you think there's a stoppage in there at some point?
I'd probably say that it would go the distance. I mean, Derek showed his iron chin, more often than not, and I don't think Joseph Parker is a massive hitter as a heavyweight. He's more of a boxer. So yeah, I could probably see it going the distance, probably with Joe Parker nicking it on points.
Both Derek and Joseph have new trainers in their corners. Just want to get your thoughts on their link-ups. After in Joseph's case with Andy Lee, Derek with Buddy McGirt. What do you make of their pairings?
Yeah, I mean, both unusual ones, really, because Joe Parker moving from New Zealand to work with Andy Lee, and obviously Derek. Has Derek moved over to America to work with
no,
Buddy?
Derek's still training in the UK. Well, he was for the rest of the camp.
Okay. So look, big changes for both anyway, and it's always a little bit tricky, the first fight with a new trainer, because a lot of the time you're stuck the way that you used to fight, and you're halfway stuck between the new things that you've been learning, and you get kind of caught in the middle. So it is always a tricky one to judge fighters on. A lot of guys, they don't really perform in that first fight. So let's just hope that this fight won't be one of those, and they both bring it and have a good scrap for us as fans. That's what we want as fans. But I'm sure both trainers won't want it that way. They'll want the guys to stick to the tactics that they think are going to win the fight easily.
Chris Eubank Jr. versus Marcus Morrison on that undercard, Gary. Chris Eubank Jr. is a heavy favourite heading into it. But just your thoughts on what you expect to see from him, especially under the tutelage of Roy Jones Jr. now?
Well, to be honest, the jury's out, isn't it? Because I think Chris, he's been with a number of trainers, and people don't really know how much influence that trainer is going to have, as opposed to how much influence his father is going to have. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, yeah, he is a big favourite, but let's not forget Marcus Morrison is a good fighter in his own right as well, good amateur pedigree, and has got a good team around him. So hopefully it's going to be a really good fight.
In Eubank Jr.'s case, if he was to come through, he said he wants a Golovkin, a Charlo, and Andrade. He wants one of the belts, or Canelo if he could get it. How do you think Chris would fare against one of those, or does it come down to how we see him perform on Saturday night?
Look, I don't really know how he'd fare against those guys. I mean, look, he's had the two losses against George Groves and against Billy Joe Saunders, but let's be fair, George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders are world-class fighters. So, I know Chris gets a lot of stick on social media, but he's a very, very good fighter. He's talented, not the biggest puncher in the world, but he puts his shots together beautifully in combinations. But going back to what you said, if he wants a shot at one of those guys, I don't think if he beats Marcus Morrison, no disrespect to Marcus Morrison, is that ideal preparation for someone of that level. I think he probably needs to, if he does get past Marcus, as I said, Marcus is a very good fighter himself. So, but if he does get past Marcus, perhaps he needs to fight himself into contention by beating someone who's in the ratings and is a lot higher up the ratings, and that'll probably prepare him better to fight the likes of those guys.
Gary, one name that's been mentioned for Chris as Liam Williams, in terms of fans would like to see him face Chris, your old charge. Just your thoughts, first and foremost, on Liam's recent bout with Demetrius Andrade out in America, obviously coming short with a unanimous decision loss. What did you make of their fight?
Look, first of all, Andrade going into it, was so heavily favoured by the Americans, whereas us over here, we're like, well, look, it's not that wider thing. It's a close fight. We know how strong Liam Williams is. It was always going to be a tough ask, don't get me wrong, but I spoke to so many Americans who just dismissed his chances out of sight, and I just said, look, Liam Williams is the real deal. Been the real deal since he was 13, 14 years of age. He's never changed. He's always been, let's just call him an animal, really. He's always been that way. I think, for the 7 years we were together, I think he boxed a lot more. He showed his boxing ability, but I think now he's a lot more front foot and using his power and his strength a lot more. I thought he did really, really well. I mean, his effort, you can't discredit his effort. He was there. He was always in his face. I think the plan was to kind of walk Andrade down and tire him out, hit him with that many shots, hit him often, get him moving those feet and tire him out. Unfortunately for Liam, Andrade on the night was very, very good in spells, wasn't he? And then when it was time for Liam to work, I think Andrade spoiled it. I think everybody said that he held too much. I think he spoiled. He held, he come down the sides, he smothered. He did all the old pro tricks that you do to get through a fight when you're tired. And I think that Andrade was blowing as early as the fourth round, and you saw it in the corner. But, Liam was never really able to catch up with him, was he? And consistently hit him with the punches that it took to sort of get him out of there. But, his effort can never be discredited. He came out of it with a lot of credit, especially from the Americans as well. And I think, now he can build from that and maybe push into another world title fight. Are people going to now take him as a voluntary? So his success or coming out of that fight with credit will probably be detrimental to him getting another shot, because he's probably going to have to fight his way into the number one contender and get the fight forced, rather than one of these guys go, oh yeah, look, we'll box Liam Williams, because obviously he's a danger man, and he came out of that fight with a lot of credit, being a danger man. Let's not forget, he hurt Andrade. I thought he hurt him twice, shook him to his boots in the third round, which a lot of people didn't really see. Andrade walked back to his corner on rubbery legs at the end of the third, and then we all see him hurt him in the ninth round. So look, he lost the fight clearly in the end, but he came out with it with a lot of credit, and obviously having hurt the champion in a way that I don't think many people have hurt him before. I know he's been dropped before, but I don't think he was as hurt in those fights as he was when Liam caught him in the ninth and in the third.
Just two things on it I wanted to get your thoughts on was, firstly, the amount of kind of times Demetrius was able to catch Liam with the uppercut. It seemed to be like his most consistent shot, and obviously dropping him early on in the fight in that second round. What did you make of it at that stage?
Well, I was working. I was commentating on the MTK bill at the time at the first two rounds. So I was trying not to look at my phone, so I was trying to concentrate. But I looked a couple of times, and a couple of people said, "Oh, he's down, he's in trouble." Blah blah. I thought, "Oh, just praying that it wouldn't be an early night." But then when we finished, we came off. I think it was about the fifth round, and a couple of the guys were saying on our group, "Oh yeah, look, he's coming right back into it. He's probably won the third, probably won the fourth, came back into it in the third." So you're just thinking then, hopefully, and hopefully keeps the pressure up and tires Andrade out. But Andrade just, when he lets his shots go, he just looks blistering, doesn't he? He looks unbelievable, but he just doesn't do it enough. but he was doing it often enough to sort of rack up most of the rounds. And, you know, people said, oh, you know, a lot of people criticizing, saying, you know, how many times did he want to get hit with the uppercut? That is just a shot that Andrade lands on everybody, you know. And I think with Liam being so eager to walk him down and to get involved, that probably made that shot a little bit easier to land. But having said that, like I said, Andrade, he lands that shot with either hand on everyone that he fights. So it's just one of those shots. You know, I think a lot of these elite fighters, you know, they've got a particular shot that they throw or a particular thing they do, and it's special. I think what Andrade does is those lead uppercuts. He just seems to have a knack to throwing them, landing them, and then getting out the way before you can hit him with a counter.
Just moving forwards and away from that and from Liam, Gary, just get your thoughts on another fight coming this weekend. Andi Ruiz Jr. returns against Chris Arreola. Ruiz a heavy favourite again heading into it, but just your thoughts on their bout.
Yeah, it's probably one that has gone under the radar a little bit. You know, is anybody really interested in Andi Ruiz after the last performance against Joshua? You know, I think the shape he walked into in that ring, you know, is disappointing. But if you look at the way he is now, there's a massive contrast, isn't there? And you know, he seems to have lost a huge amount of weight. How many of these photos have been maybe airbrushed, and people have messed around with the photos? You know, we won't really know until the weigh-in. But I think he has lost a massive amount of weight. And listen, that can only improve Andi Ruiz. I think the world heavyweight champion isn't supposed to look like he looked. I don't want to offend anybody there, but you know, I just think that the world heavyweight champion has a duty to come into the ring in some sort of shape, surely. But I think it would be massively advantageous to Andi Ruiz if he's lost quite a bit of weight. It's going to improve everything. It's going to improve his movement. It's going to improve his speed. And Chris Arreola is no joke, let's not forget. So it is a tough fight for Andi. But if he's got his drive back, he's got his mojo back, and having lost maybe the weight that he's lost, then looking for an impressive victory, having changed camps as well. Obviously, he's with Reynoso now. So it's that new gym effect as well. You know I touched on earlier about the new trainer and maybe, but I think with Eddie Reynoso and that camp, there's just such a buzz around the camp that I think it'll drive Andi Ruiz on, and hopefully he'll record an impressive victory. Final
one, Gary, just want to pick your brains about next weekend. Yeah, next weekend, Billy Joe Saunders gets his chance against Canelo Alvarez. How do you rate Billy Joe's chances, Gary? How do you expect the fight to play out?
Look, you know, I think Canelo is the best fighter on the planet. We all know that. He's just very impressive. The movement, the speed of the punch, the elusiveness. People have never really, well, they have, but you know, you don't really hear people commenting on his footwork because he does everything else so well. Footwork's going to come into this fight in a big way, I think, because Billy Joe Saunders is so clever on his feet. So, you know, I think that if anybody can outbox him, it's going to be Billy Joe, because he's going to be there. He's going to be in and out using those feet. Don't think he's going to be there to get hit with many counters. Probably Billy Joe Saunders has a really, really good start. You know, I think if anybody's going to beat him, if anybody's got the best chance of beating him is at this moment in time is probably Joe Saunders. But I see him having a good start, but I probably see Canelo breaking him down after that and recording a points victory. But I think Joe is so slippery, isn't he? He doesn't really get hit with anything clean. One punch maybe, but not two or three. So I can see him lasting till the end and it being a close points victory to Canelo. But look, if he did outbox him, it would be absolutely brilliant. And you know, wish Billy Joe all the best, and we're all rooting for him back home, and we hope he gets a victory. But you know, if that's my heart speaking, but my head speaking is probably says, you know, that Canelo's probably too good, but on points.
Well, Gary, it has been a pleasure to catch up with you today. I know we've tried to tie in a few times over these last week. It's good to be able to do so. Look after yourself, and I will speak to you again soon. Thank you for your time, and thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Thanks a lot, Andy. See you soon.